You know, it's probably one of the most incredible pieces of natural engineering you own, and you're using it every single waking moment. So today, we're going to take a guided tour of your eye.
So it all starts with light, right? But have you ever really stopped to think about how a simple ray of light transforms into the vibrant, detailed, colorful world you see all around you? To figure that out, we're going to follow its journey, starting right from the front of the eye and going all the way to the back.
Okay, the absolute best way to wrap your head around this is to think of your eye as a biological camera. I mean, it's got all the parts. It has a refractive system, that's the lenses, to focus the light. It's got an aperture, the pupil, to control how much light gets in, and of course, it has a sensor at the back, the retina, to capture the image. So let's start with those lenses.
All right, so our journey kicks off right at the very front, with the eye's incredibly powerful focusing system. This is where light first enters and gets bent, or what's called refracted, to create a super sharp image. You've got this two-part system. The clear cornea out front does about 80% of the heavy lifting, and then the crystalline lens, tucked right behind it, handles the final 20%.
You know, the physics behind why things get blurry is actually pretty simple. If that focus point doesn't land perfectly on the retina, the image just isn't sharp. So if you're nearsighted, that's myopia, the eyeball is a little too long, so the image focuses in front of the retina. And if you're farsighted or have hyperopia, it's the opposite problem. The eyeball is too short, and the light wants to focus somewhere behind it.
So how do we fix this? Well, it's all about rebending that light before it gets too far. For nearsightedness, we use a concave, or a minus lens. It spreads the light rays out just enough to push that focus point back where it belongs, right on the retina. And for farsightedness, you guessed it, we do the opposite. A convex or plus lens brings those light rays together to pull the focus point forward. It's a really elegant solution when you think about it.
Okay, but what happens when the lens itself is the problem? Well, that's a cataract. I want you to think of it like your camera lens getting all smudged and cloudy. Over time, these proteins inside the lens can start clumping up, and when they do, they scatter the light instead of focusing it, which prevents you from seeing a clear image. Now, most people think of cataracts as just an age thing. And yeah, that's the #1 cause, but it's definitely not the only one. The real insight here is that lots of different things in life can trigger this. Systemic diseases like diabetes, for example, can totally speed up the process. A physical injury to the eye, long-term use of medicines like steroids, and even certain infections at birth can all cause that lens to get cloudy.
The good news, the fix for this is, wow, incredibly effective these days. It's a procedure called phacoemulsification. It uses this tiny, high-frequency ultrasound probe to basically break up that cloudy lens, and then it's gently suctioned out. A brand new, clear artificial lens is put right in its place, and boom, vision is restored. Often without a single stitch. It's pretty amazing.
All right, moving on from the lens, deep inside the eye, there's this whole other system at play. The eye has to maintain a stable internal pressure to keep its shape and stay healthy. But when that pressure system gets out of whack, it can lead to one of the most silent and dangerous eye diseases out there.
This is all thanks to a fluid called the aqueous humor. I mean, seriously, think of it like a tiny, perfect plumbing system inside your eye. There's a structure behind your iris that's constantly making this fluid. It flows forward through the pupil and then drains out through this spongy little filter at the edge of the iris. This constant cycle is what keeps the eye nourished and maintains that crucial pressure.
And that constant flow creates what we call intraocular pressure, or IOP. You know the best way to think about this? It's just like the air pressure in a tire. You need enough to keep the whole structure firm, but if you have too much, well, that's when you get damage. It's all about that super delicate balance between how much fluid is made and how much drains out.
So, what's the magic number? What are doctors looking for? Well, they start to get concerned when the pressure inside the eye climbs above 21 millimeters of mercury. Once it's consistently higher than that, it starts putting a dangerous amount of strain on the most critical parts at the back of the eye.
And right there, that is the heart of the problem with the most common type of glaucoma. See, the drainage channels get less efficient over the years, kind of like a sink that's slowly clogging up. And the scary part? The pressure builds up so slowly that you feel absolutely nothing. No pain, no warning. But all that relentless pressure is slowly crushing the delicate nerve fibers of your optic nerve. That's the vital data cable that connects your eye to your brain.
And doctors can literally see this damage when they look inside your eye. As more and more of those nerve fibers die off, the little pit in the center of the optic nerve gets deeper and wider.
One ophthalmologist famously described this telltale sign of advanced damage as having a bean pot appearance, a clear sign of damage that you just can't reverse.
Okay, so all this time, we've been following this ray of light. Where does it end up? Its final destination is the retina. This is our camera's sensor. It's this incredibly delicate layer of nerve tissue at the very back of the eye that actually captures the image. But as you can imagine, it is also incredibly vulnerable.
Things like chronic conditions, especially diabetes, man, they can just wreak havoc on the retina's tiny blood vessels. High blood sugar makes them weak, and they start to leak. Doctors can spot these early signs. They see these tiny bulges called microaneurysms or leaky fatty deposits called hard exudates. They even see these fluffy little cotton wool spots, which are actually tiny areas where the retina has been starved of oxygen.
Okay, but here's where things take a really dangerous turn. When the retina isn't getting enough oxygen, it sends out these distress signals, and those signals trigger the growth of new blood vessels. The body's trying to help, but these new vessels are weak and fragile. They can bleed into the jelly that fills the eye, or they can create scar tissue that literally pulls on the retina, causing it to detach. But listen, not all retinal damage happens slowly over years. Sometimes it's an all-out emergency. And one of the most chilling ways to describe what happens is just 3 words: sudden, painless, catastrophic vision loss. We're talking about the ocular equivalent of a massive stroke. What we're talking about is a central retinal artery occlusion. Usually, it's a tiny little clot that travels up to the eye and completely blocks the main artery. The whole retina turns pale because it has no blood flow, but the very center, which has a different blood supply, stays red. This creates that classic cherry red spot that tells the doctor exactly what's going on.
Now, it's super important to know the difference between that and a vein occlusion. Think about it this way. The artery is the water main bringing fresh water in. The vein is the drain pipe taking used water out. A vein occlusion is like a backup in the drain pipe. It also damages your vision, but when a doctor looks inside, they'll see widespread bleeding and swelling all over the retina, not that pale cherry red spot you get with a blocked artery.
So, we've seen how the eye's focus can go wrong, how its internal pressure system can fail, and how its sensor, the retina, can get damaged. So after all that, the big question, the most important one, is what can we actually do to protect our sight?
If you look back at what we just covered, there is one really dangerous theme that keeps popping up: silence. The most devastating eye diseases are so often completely silent. Cataracts? They blur your vision so gradually you might not even notice. Glaucoma? It steals your peripheral vision first, so your central vision seems totally fine. And diabetic retinopathy? It often has 0 symptoms until the damage is already severe.
And this right here is the single most important thing I want you to take away from all of this. You can't wait for symptoms. You can't wait for pain or for your vision to get blurry to tell you something is wrong. Because by the time those things show up, it might already be too late to fix it. Your only real defense, the single most important factor, is early detection through regular, comprehensive eye exams.
So I'm just going to leave you with one final thought, one question. We've seen how the most serious threats to your vision are almost always silent. They give you no warning signs before they cause irreversible harm. So the question is, when was the last time you had someone take a look?